You wake up and for a second you do not move. Maybe it is 6 in the morning, maybe it is later, it does not matter. What matters is what happens next. Because in the next few minutes, your body is going to ask you for something it has been missing for 8 hours straight, and almost nobody gives it what it actually needs. You reach for your phone, or you reach for coffee, or you reach for nothing at all and just stumble to the bathroom. But there is a question sitting underneath all of that, a question most people never think to ask, which is this: what does your body actually run on? And the answer is not caffeine, it is not sugar, it is something much simpler, something you probably have sitting in your kitchen cabinet right now, and by the end of this video you are going to understand exactly why. Before I go further, if this kind of evidence-based breakdown is useful to you, this is exactly the kind of thing we do here on Smart Psychology, so consider staying with me for the next few minutes. It is going to change how you think about your entire morning. I want to be upfront about something, because there is a version of this topic that has been completely ruined by wellness influencers. The version where someone tells you to add a pinch of pink Himalayan salt to your water because it is trendy, because it looks good on camera, because some celebrity does it, and they never explain why, they just tell you to trust them. I find that kind of content genuinely frustrating, because the actual physiology behind why your body needs sodium first thing in the morning is fascinating on its own. It does not need to be dressed up with mysticism or marketing. What I want to do today is walk you through what is actually happening inside your bloodstream, your kidneys, your adrenal glands, and your nervous system while you sleep, and why the first thing you drink can either support that system or work directly against it. Once you understand the mechanism, the advice stops sounding like a trend and starts sounding like basic biology, and that is the kind of understanding that actually sticks with you. So let us start with what happens to your body overnight, because this is the part almost nobody talks about. While you sleep, you are not just resting, you are losing fluid continuously, through breathing, through skin, through basic metabolic processes that never stop, even while you are unconscious. Estimates from sleep physiology research put overnight fluid loss somewhere between half a liter and a full liter every single night, without exception. And fluid loss is never just water loss, it is electrolyte loss too, specifically sodium, potassium, and chloride, the three minerals your entire nervous system depends on to function. Sodium in particular is not just some flavoring mineral, it is the primary regulator of your blood volume and your blood pressure, and it is the mineral your kidneys spend enormous metabolic energy managing every single day. When you wake up, your sodium concentration is not where it was when you went to sleep, and your kidneys have already been quietly adjusting for hours to try to keep your blood volume stable. At the same time, something else is happening that most people have never heard of, called the cortisol awakening response. In the 30 to 45 minutes after you open your eyes, your cortisol levels spike by somewhere between 38 and 75%. A shift documented across decades of research and considered one of the most reliable hormonal patterns in the entire 24-hour cycle. Cortisol gets a bad reputation because people associate it with stress, but it is also the hormone responsible for mobilizing energy and preparing your body to function in the morning. Here is the part that matters for our topic today. Cortisol works closely with a hormone called aldosterone, and aldosterone's entire job is to tell your kidneys how much sodium to hold onto and how much to release. When you wake up dehydrated and sodium depleted from a night of fluid loss, and your cortisol and aldosterone systems are trying to recalibrate all at once, your body is in a genuinely delicate hormonal moment. And what you put into it first can either ease that transition or add stress on top of stress. This is where a lot of people go straight for coffee, and I will come back to coffee. Caffeine is a mild diuretic, meaning it increases fluid and sodium loss through urination, at exactly the moment is already managing a sodium deficit from overnight losses. You are compounding the problem before you have addressed it at all. This is not a reason to sequence your morning correctly, it is a reason to morning correctly, and that sequencing is what we are building toward. Quick note before we continue. If you want more breakdowns like this delivered in a way that actually explains the why instead of just the what, that is the entire purpose of this channel, so it is worth sticking around. Now let us talk about why salt water specifically, and not just plain water, addresses this problem in a way plain water alone cannot. When you drink a large glass of plain water on an empty stomach, especially after a night of sodium loss, you can temporarily dilute the sodium concentration in your blood even further, because you are adding fluid volume without adding back the mineral your body just spent all night losing. This is a real physiological phenomenon studied in exercise science and rehydration research, sometimes described in the context of a condition called hyponatremia, where blood sodium becomes diluted to a degree that can cause headaches, fatigue, and brain fog, particularly in people who drink large volumes of water quickly without replacing electrolytes. This is precisely why organizations like the World Health Organization built oral rehydration solutions, the exact formula used worldwide to treat severe dehydration, around a specific ratio of water, sodium, and a small amount of sugar to drive absorption, because plain water alone rehydrates the body less efficiently than water paired with sodium. Your small intestine has a transport mechanism called the sodium-glucose cotransporter, and this mechanism pulls water into your bloodstream far more effectively when sodium is present alongside it. This is basic cellular transport physiology, not a wellness theory. There is also a direct connection between sodium and your stomach that almost nobody mentions. Sodium chloride, ordinary table salt, is composed of two elements your stomach depends on directly, sodium and chloride is one half of hydrochloric acid, the acid your stomach uses to break down protein and to kill off pathogens that arrive with your food. Your body manufactures this acid using chloride ions pulled from your bloodstream, and adequate sodium chloride intake supports the raw materials your stomach lining cells need to keep producing that acid at a healthy concentration. This does not mean pouring salt directly onto an already sensitive stomach is wise. Timing and dilution matter enormously, which we will get to. But the biochemical relationship between salt intake and stomach acid production is well established in digestive physiology. It is not a stretch or a wellness myth. Let me address something directly, because a lot of people have spent the last few decades being told that salt is simply bad, full stop, and that framing has created a strange blind spot. The advice to reduce sodium intake came primarily from research on processed food consumption, where the average person was consuming enormous amounts of hidden sodium through packaged and restaurant food, often 2 to 3 times more than the body needs, and that genuinely does contribute to high blood pressure in sodium-sensitive individuals. But that population-level warning about processed food sodium got flattened into a blanket message that all sodium is dangerous, and that flattening ignored something important, which is that sodium is not optional for human physiology. It is an essential mineral. Your nerves cannot fire without it, your muscles cannot contract without it, and your blood volume cannot be regulated without it. The actual research on sodium and health outcomes is more nuanced than the public health messaging suggests, with some large population studies, including analysis published in The Lancet from the PURE study involving over 9,000 participants across multiple countries, suggesting that the relationship between sodium intake and cardiovascular risk follows something closer to a J-shaped curve, where both very low and very high sodium intake are associated with increased risk, and moderate intake sits in the safest range. This is a genuinely contested area of nutrition science, and I am not telling you to disregard your doctor, especially if you have hypertension, kidney disease, or heart failure, because sodium management in those conditions is medically serious. What I am telling you is that for a generally healthy adult, a small amount of quality salt dissolved in water, first thing in the morning, is not the reckless act it has been made out to be. It is closer to correcting a genuine overnight deficit. So what does this actually look like in practice? Take a glass of warm or room temperature water, roughly 300 to 500 milliliters, and dissolve in it a quarter teaspoon of good quality salt. Sea salt or Himalayan salt both work fine, because the trace mineral differences between them are nutritionally minor. What matters is the sodium chloride itself. Drink this before coffee, before food, ideally within the first 15 to 20 minutes of waking, while your body is still in that overnight sodium deficit and your cortisol awakening response is ramping up. This is not about replacing water entirely with salt water all day. It is about this one specific window in the morning where your body's sodium and fluid balance genuinely benefits from the combination. Some people prepare what is sometimes called sol water, a fully saturated salt water solution kept in a jar, using only a teaspoon of that concentrated mixture, diluted into a full glass of water each morning, which achieves a similar effect with more consistency and concentration. Either approach works. What matters is the principle, sodium and water together, consumed early before caffeine compounds the sodium loss further. I do want to be responsible here and mention who should be cautious. If you have diagnosed hypertension that is not well controlled, if you have any form of kidney disease, if you have congestive heart failure, or if your doctor has specifically told you to restrict sodium, this practice is not for you without medical guidance, and you should talk to your physician before changing anything about your sodium intake. This is also not a substitute for medical treatment of dehydration or electrolyte disorders, and if you experience symptoms like persistent swelling, unusual thirst, or blood pressure concerns, that is a conversation for a doctor, not a morning routine. For the average healthy adult without those conditions, the quantities described here, a quarter teaspoon in a glass of water, are well within what your kidneys process on a completely normal daily basis. This is a small, physiologically reasonable amount, not a drastic intervention. Here is something that I think ties this whole picture together. Your kidneys filter around 180 liters of fluid every single day, and they reabsorb over 99% of the sodium that passes through them, because your body is extraordinarily good at conserving this mineral when it needs to. This is not a system that is fragile or easily overwhelmed by a quarter teaspoon of salt. It is a system built specifically to manage sodium balance with remarkable precision. The problem in modern life is not that people occasionally give their body sodium when it needs it. The problem is a chaotic pattern of either wildly excessive sodium from processed food or complete sodium avoidance driven by outdated blanket advice, both of which prevent your body from operating in the steady, moderate range it is actually designed for. A small glass of salt water in the morning is not a hack. It is simply handing your body a resource it is already primed to use at the exact moment it needs it most. So think back to that moment we started with, you sitting on the edge of the bed, your body already running that overnight sequence of sodium loss and cortisol rise before you have made a single conscious decision. The choice in front of you every single morning is small, and it repeats 365 times a year, water and sodium first, given deliberately, before coffee stacks a diuretic on top of a deficit, before anything else happens. It costs you 2 minutes, and it works with the biology that is already unfolding inside you, rather than against it. If this kind of explanation is something you want more of, evidence-based, no gimmicks, just the actual mechanism behind everyday habits, that is what smart psychology is built around. So consider sticking with this channel for more of it. Give your body what it is already asking for, and let everything else about your morning follow from there.